Welcome to our July Microsoft Teams news show. I'm Rob Scott, and today I'm joined by Tom Arbuthnot from Empowering Cloud and our VIP panel of expert guests. And together, we're going to be diving into the latest news from the Teams space. So welcome, everybody. And Tom, how's it going?
Yeah, really good, thanks. Yeah, I mean, as we record, it's the first day of the Microsoft new FY. So usually we've gone through a bit of a planning period, but there's still a few interesting releases and news pieces to talk about. And there's definitely a bit of a look forward as into what's coming, this year.
Indeed, yeah. And just looking back for a second, I saw you on social last week, whizzing around a racetrack at Comsverse. Tell me more. How did that go?
Yeah, it was awesome. Yeah, so Comsverse, I think it was their fifth year. They had over 700 people through the door here in the UK, and it's a community-driven conference by Mark Vail and a whole team of MVPs and other contributors to do a real Teams-focused event. So another really good one, really well turned out, and Graham and I did our almost annual now race around the racetrack and get feedback. I did the same thing with Randy as well. It was good fun.
Well, it does sound fun. It does sound like fun, but Graham, did you pick up anything interesting? What do you think?
Yeah, I did. So I didn't get time to go to many sessions, but the one or two I did. It's great, informative sessions. Again, mostly community, driven. People giving up their own time, talking about various different topics, and obviously we had a fair few topics around Copilot and what that means for certain businesses or for users, and then. I hosted a session on our community show for devices, and that was actually a packed out theatre, which was great. So great attendance day one. Day two, a little bit quieter, as you'd expect to most conferences, but overall a superb conference to network with peers.
Superb. Well, I can't believe it's 5 years old, but wow, 700 people, that's fantastic. I'm just a shame I couldn't be there, but either way, there's lots of big news happening this week. I mean, we might end up with a new prime minister by the end of the week, Tom. What do you reckon?
Yeah, it's interesting times, isn't it? We've got the elections on both sides of the pond this year, so it's exciting times.
And speaking of things closer to home, just on the news front, so the European Commission has spoken once again. They've issued a formal statement of objections to Microsoft, Tom, alleging, can't get my words out, alleging potential abusive practices in the bundling of Microsoft Teams. What's going on?
Yeah, so we've talked about this before on the show. So this dates back to Slack putting in a complaint and another company to the European Commission who kind of manage competitiveness around it being unfair that Microsoft, made Teams part of the Office 365 / Microsoft 365 suite, and that gave them an unfair advantage. And Slack made that complaint quite a while ago, even before they were bought by Salesforce. And it's kind of taken this long to tick through the European Competition Commission's process. And now they've basically said formally to Microsoft that, yes, we think you've abused your power. Microsoft have been going backward and forwards talking to them. So there's been a dialogue. And this is what caused Microsoft to initially unbundle Teams in Europe, and now they've unbundled Teams worldwide. But the Competition Commission have said that's not enough. We need to do more. I haven't said what more is. I've just said we need to do more. So now there's a dialogue, and Microsoft have an opportunity to go back to them. But if they can't agree kind of what the right way forward is, the regulators can fine Microsoft up to 10% of their worldwide turnover. So this is a significant thing. It's not trivial. And there's a whole lot of debate on both sides of this fence of, I mean, Microsoft originally had Skype and OCS as part of Office, and this is the natural successor. So are they not allowed to bundle like a successor? And yes, maybe, Teams was influenced by Skype, but does that mean big companies can't innovate? And on the other side of the coin, did Microsoft give themselves some advantages in Teams where Teams could integrate with Office in a way that other products couldn't? Should the APIs be common so that a Zoom or a Webex or a 8x8 can do exactly the same things Teams can do, that it doesn't have a proprietary advantage? So it's an interesting back and forth on, did they have an unfair advantage, or did they just do well and the product does much more than Slack and therefore it was successful?
You mentioned this was done before, obviously, Salesforce acquired Slack. Does Salesforce care? They're a very different business to say what Slack is, but also what Microsoft is. So is it any relevance? Are they going to let it just carry on and see what comes out? or will it just get we can't be bothered?
I mean, it's kind of like, where does it end, in the sense of, if you're a big successful company, are you no longer allowed to compete? Like if someone comes up with something that's external, you can't make your version of it because you're not allowed to. And there's a really good thread on LinkedIn which we'll link, about the kind of back and forth, and somebody said, there's been a whole bunch of products that have been bundled with Office that haven't done well and have died, and that was okay, because they, it's a real interesting debate. I mean, for me, I think the European Competition Commission are missing a trick, which is they're now debating this, which happened 5-6 years ago. AI is the new frontier, and it's an API story. Like, is there anything that the incumbent can do, not just Microsoft, any of the big tech companies, that the others can't do? Apple's under the grill at the moment for the same variants of integration. Like, they integrate Apple Watch and phone in a way that nobody else can replicate. Does that stifle the watch market? Because I couldn't possibly choose someone, because only Apple Watch can do things that Apple Watch can do. So it's not just Microsoft, it's a general big tech thing as to if they give themselves private APIs, are they creating an unfair advantage in a new sub-market?
Or if you look at Salesforce now, they used to have Chatter, now they could integrate Slack, bundle that for free, then Microsoft will go, hang on, what are you guys doing?
Yeah, it's very murky waters, and the Competition Commission are not terribly clear on why, like there's no black and white as to this is okay and this is not okay, which I think is challenging, particularly for the American companies, because they're like, well, who's this external authority that comes in and says Apple can't tightly integrate or Microsoft can't tightly integrate? Like, particularly Apple, that's their whole USP, right? Is building these tightly integrated experiences, but you're not allowed to because it's potentially competitive. Is a fun conversation.
Stifling innovation, but I suppose it really just shines more of a light on the tension, doesn't it, between these regulatory bodies and these major tech companies, and that's not going away anytime soon, because we need fair market.
Yeah, there's a role to play, and I think people, when they're defending these big companies, forget these companies are built to do everything they can possibly do to win within the rules, and whatever the rules are, they'll push them to the limits because that's their literal fiscal responsibility. So, like, you need a body, and it's not the American bodies like the FTC and stuff are getting involved to a lesser extent as well. So it's not just Europe, but Europe does tend to be a bit sharper with the guidance and requirements.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's move on to some more exciting stuff, Tom. Microsoft just released a drop of news updates in their most recent blog, but we were going to run through those to start with because there's some great stuff in there. Do you want to take us through the first one?
Yeah, there's quite a lot in the June update, so I picked out some of the key things. So Microsoft Teams Phone Intelligent Call Recap, which we talked about before in preview, is now coming to GA. And that's part of either Teams Premium or the Microsoft 365 Copilot license. So as a reminder, that is today in meetings, if you have Premium or Copilot, you get a recap. You will now be able to do that in your peer-to-peer and your PSD and your Teams phone calls. So really nice to see that kind of Teams Premium / Copilot story coming to Teams Phone. We got a whole bunch of recording and transcription policies. So again, and a theme of this FY for Microsoft is going to be Teams Premium and Copilot. These are to unblock customers that have very specific requirements for these people can record, but these people can't. These people can enable recording. These people can't enable recording. Transcription has to be approved by everybody on the call, and kind of every variant of those to hit the requirements to allow people to record and transcribe, and therefore take advantage of these new AI generated insights, basically. Keeping going, we've also got require explicit consent for just transcription, which is a brand new policy. So we've had explicit consent for recordings. Now we've got explicit consent per everybody on the call for transcription. The Copilot sales plugin for Microsoft Teams is rolling out. So this is taking an AI assistant for selling and bringing it into your meeting, and it offering help, and it pulling summaries and it putting them into your CRM system. So that's quite a big one. Intelligent translation of chats, so text chats, translating language, and also there was a bunch of enhancements for multi-tenant organizations. So those big organizations that have multiple tenants through M&O or acquisition, they can now work more closely together. Still some rough edges there, but starting to bring together the idea that some customers will permanently have multiple tenants. How can we make that as streamlined as possible?
Lots of cool features there, Tom. Next up, we said we'd talk about one of my favorites, which is custom backgrounds coming into Microsoft Teams Rooms panels. Tell us more.
Yeah, maybe Graham is closest to this one, I think. But yeah, essentially, we've been talking about custom backgrounds for a while. We've had them on MTRW, and now they're coming to panels and eventually Android Rooms as well, right, Graham?
Indeed. So actually, it was first announced for Rooms, then it will come in June, then they pushed it to July, now it's been pushed to August, and then they've also now announced the panel, so the room controller outside the room that you have your scheduling panel on. So again, you have consistent branding across your inside the room, outside the meeting room on there. So it'll be part of the Pro license, so you must have a Microsoft Teams Room Pro license, and that'll be then configurable from your Teams admin center on there. But yeah, users need to be careful if they're going to probably set it up. They'll need to create profiles for each country, because when you change a setting, it also changes the time zone, the language, so you're going to have a lot of admin work to do in the background, I think.
Yeah, maybe Ryan. I know Ryan's got some customers that are pretty excited about it, so Ryan, it'd be good to get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, this one long anticipated feature, and I think the value of leveraging Teams Rooms out of meeting for what could be additional instructions or material on how to get the best experience from a room that's customized, or it could be branding or other signage or safety information. This has been again long requested by customers, and super exciting to see that coming. The initial partnerships that were announced were with AppSpace and Zogo, so two providers, external providers, as well as a direct kind of URL link that you can use. And so yeah, this is I think just a huge positive. It's existed in other service provider worlds, and it's been one of the pain points for some customers who have moved to Teams and lost that functionality. So excited to see it here.
So yeah, just to add into there, it's coming for that Windows platform first, and then Android will follow later on this year, early next year. So you have that consistent experience regardless of which type of device you have in the room.
Yeah, it's still a requirement, which is interesting, isn't it? It's so Microsoft obviously announced direct guest join, where we could do a WebRTC join between an MTR room and Zoom and Webex, but there's still this need to join from Teams Rooms occasionally to SIP standards-based meetings, be that Zoom or Webex, or be that any other third party. So today you can already SIP dial if you type in a SIP URI manually, but this is bringing with Teams Rooms Pro, and with you need a Pexip subscription as well, the ability to scrape the calendar in Teams, click to dial a SIP meeting that will push out via Pexip and do a SIP-based join. So gives you kind of more compatibility with different SIP systems, and gives you some abilities to things like Webex and Zoom that you don't have with direct guest join, because you're joining as an anonymous guest in a browser.
Yeah, it's super helpful. There are some rubber hits the road issues within the WebRTC kind of interop process from any provider in any direction. And so some of those have been things like the wired HDMI cable in the room, wasn't supported when you did one of these interop meetings, or if you have multiple displays, only one of those two worked, and to some degree, depending on service provider, it could have been a lower frame rate. And so there's things like that have been challenges for many customers, as they either as part of a migration or just as part of the daily world where they get invited to a third-party meeting and want to still leverage their room system to get the best possible experience. And so yeah, this opens up some additional, it does require this, as Tom mentioned, a subscription with Pexip to start. It sounds like Cisco is queued up to potentially join as well. Neither is released at this moment, but it sounds like Pexip will be first, and then Cisco will follow. But this opens the door to enhanced interoperability with third-party services for folks using Teams Rooms.
And just to add to that, what was announced at Infocom was also a Pexip, but with another platform for Zoom, for example, again to achieve that interoperability to other platforms. So not relying, as Ryan said, on that WebRTC with those limitations, but it'll give you Teams, Zoom, Webex, Google, RingCentral, or anything that has a SIP address. Now it's able to scrape the calendar and you get a join button to make it easier. So that's what will also come to Microsoft Teams rooms. So it's automated on Windows first, obviously, and then also Android as well at some point, which I think the blog post said early 25. So again, making interoperability easier for people, but also better quality, because we're not seeing interoperability going away. People still need to talk to each other. I know we talk about, you pick up your mobile phone, you can call anyone. We're still not there in a video world.
I'm glad you said it. It's not going away anytime soon, is it? So,
no.
Speaking of something that's not going away anytime soon, the next update and the final update today is Skype for Business server roadmap update. Tom, I mean, what's all this about, Tom?
Crazy. So we've got Skype for Business Server 2015 and 2019. There's still some of that out there, not a lot, but there's some. That goes end of support by the 14th of October 2025. And Microsoft have kind of finally publicly said, here's what's going to happen. So essentially, they're going to offer a cumulative update patch for Server 2019, and then they will move to what's called Skype for Business Skype Business Server Subscription Edition, which is what they're also doing with Exchange and SharePoint. So essentially, those that want to stay on-prem can continue ticking along, and they move to a subscription model for those licenses rather than an annual cost, or they need to wrap it up some kind of software assurance. It doesn't mean that Skype Business Server is going to get a bunch of new features. I mean, you can almost tell here, basically it's Skype Business Server 2019 with a rebadge and ticking along with security patches and hotfixes. But it gives you a supportable state if for some reason you want to stay on-prem indefinitely and you're happy with where Skype Business is from a server and client point of view. You do have that option.
Has there been any indication on pricing for that?
No, I've been digging around and nothing I can see publicly yet as to what it is or how it will work. I imagine that will come nearer that October 2025 deadline. I wonder if it will mirror similarly to kind of what they're doing with Exchange and SharePoint, but it's very much a kind of option for those who are big and complex. Microsoft's first motion is still, get to the cloud for all these workloads where you can. It's just if you've got a air gap scenario or you're a nuclear facility or there's some technical reason why you're not going to go all in on cloud, you have an option.
And just to add to that again, on the room side of things, Microsoft has said version 4.19 is the last version that will support an MTR on Windows with Skype. So then that'll be the question of, well, how do I get the new features on Teams? And that's actually also where we just mentioned earlier with Pexip Interop, that can then get you Interop back into Skype, for example. So there is a migration path for people with rooms, but again, it'll cost you more to run that if you want to be on the latest and greatest supported versions.
Yeah, I think when you're working with Microsoft, it's good to know which way the wind's blowing, and the wind is definitely not blowing to further investment in Skype server. So you need to have a good reason to be doing it. You don't take this to mean, oh, there's a subscription, so I'm going to get updates and changes and new features. Like it's very much going to, it's very much going to tick along as is.
Certainly, just to get you used to paying that monthly subscription. Yeah, I can see what they're doing.
Yeah, removes that excuse for moving to cloud. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, get the financial director kind of tuned into subscriptions. So great stuff. Well, 3 up and coming events, Tom, worth a mention.
Yeah, so first off, we had the Converged Communication Partner event for the US the week before last. Really great hybrid event. So the US team had 100 or so people over, I think, and then it was virtual. There's an APAC version of that, so live but online. So it's the virtual Converged Partner Bootcamp, July 8th to July 10th. And it's running 9 p.m. to 1 a.m. PDT. So kind of more suitable for the Asia Pac audience. Then there is Teams Fireside Chat. So we've got Tracy Herr, who's awesome. She's a senior escalation engineer, and she's really deep on Intune and Android. So we're going to talk about kind of devices and what's going on with ASOP and MDEP and all that good fun on Teams Fireside Chat. And we've got the usual Microsoft Teams devices Ask Us Anything, which is led by Graham, 15th and 16th of July as well. So we're wrapping down the live event season, but we're still ticking on with the virtual stuff. So I hope to see you at those.
Yeah, plenty to watch live and on demand from the sunbed across the summer season, I'm sure.
Exactly. You don't want to be bored, You don't want to be bored.
It's always time for learning. Always time for learning.
100%.
Good stuff. Well, that's it from us. If you want to be part of the conversation, you can connect with Tom, myself, and our guest speakers on LinkedIn and maybe even X. And our social links are in the description. Thanks to everyone for joining us. We'll be back again next month for another essential drop of Microsoft Teams news. Thanks for watching.